Hello, Dr. Moraire. How are you?
I think we can start.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone who's joined us today, and thank you as well to all of our parents who I'm going to introduce in a short while. My name is Joanne. I am an English teacher at Uwcd Dilijan. I'm standing in for Gabrielle today, who sends his apologies. He's not feeling particularly well. Like so many of us on campus at the moment, you'll hear that I also have a little bit of a cold, but hopefully what I say will be clear. Just a little bit of background about me. I've been working at the school since January 2020. I came just before all of this started, and I have been teaching English A and English B. If I teach any of your students, please let me know later. It'll be very interesting to put some names to faces. So I worked as an English language assistant in public schools in Japan and France, and I enjoyed this so much that I felt the classroom was the right place for me to be. I then qualified as a teacher on the Teach First programme, and for those of you that know the programme, it's targeted towards students from low-income backgrounds. So afterwards, I worked with universities to support some of these students in making their applications, and I've done quite a bit of work with colleges at Oxford and Cambridge in the UK. As a disclaimer, I am not an expert on American universities, but this is something that I hope my parents are going to help me out with today. And if there's anything that I can't answer, Harvey has asked me to let you know that for any parents of first year students, he will be holding a university conference on the 5th of May, and he can answer any questions that we're not able to answer today there. So it's a very busy period for Harvey at the moment because he's in the midst of admissions, but we've already heard some success stories of students going off to their dream universities. Although we're a young school, we do have a good track record with university admissions, as some of the parents will be able to tell you today. Last year, this was not easy given the pandemic, and we can anticipate some challenges again this year, perhaps, that might be brought up by continuing travel restrictions. However, as we say in the UK, keep calm and carry on. Everyone will get to be where they are supposed to be eventually. Our session today promises to be very interesting because we have panelists with some very diverse backgrounds. It's really, really valuable that we have input like this from parents, and I'm so pleased that everyone is, all of our panelists today have been able to find time in their busy schedules to participate. So you may have seen their biographies in the announcement, but I will give a brief introduction to each panelist and in alphabetical order, and then I will explain a little bit more about what our session holds today. So first of all, Ms. Tatavik as Aybazian. Most of you know her because she's part of our admissions team, and she also has a son who graduated from UWC Atlantic in Wales. We also have with us Mr. James Baxter. He is an award-winning journalist from Canada and currently has a son in our DP2 cohort as well. And we have Dr. Janozipo Maraire. She is a neurosurgeon from Zimbabwe, and as I was researching our panel for this discussion, I discovered that she'd also written a very wonderful novel, and I'm going to ask lots of questions about that at some point, I hope, because I'm a literature teacher. She herself is a UWC Atlantic graduate. And then finally, we have Professor Gernal Olmes and Professor Orhan Kavak, who are the parents of Rosa, who was my mentee last year. She is now studying at Brown University. Gernal is a professor of medicine at Dikla University, and Orhan Kavak is also a professor but this time of geology at the same university, and they are from Turkey. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And this is the format that we're going to use today. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to give us their personal advice in relation to university admissions as they experienced with their children. So some interesting things to talk about might be visas, accommodation, language barriers, what it's like to adapt to life in a new country, or any other aspects that you would like to highlight. If you have any questions during our panelist discussion, please could I ask you to leave them in the chat. There's a box at the bottom of your screen which will say Q&A, and we will aim to answer these after the discussion. And I'm hoping to finish this in an hour, but if there are any questions that we can't answer today, then we will make sure that you have these answered in the fullness of time if we need to go away and check anything. Okay, so first of all, we will start in alphabetical order. Tatavik, could I ask you to talk a little bit about your experiences with university admissions?
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me as a parent. And yes, when my son was admitted in Atlantic, at that time UWC Diligent was not yet open in Armenia. And that's how I started learning about UWC. And then he was in his first year when I started also my concerns about university, about his university admission. So as a parent, as a concerned parent indeed, I was doing this research, and he was having his own struggles indeed with language barrier, with all sorts of stuff in UWC. And at that time I already knew that wait a minute, I should still go and get more information about university stuff. I didn't have any idea that there is such a wide and well-developed university counseling in the system. I had no idea about it. And then when I had my research list, when I had my university list and was trying to go through it with him, he was like, I think I will tell you that the smartest thing he has ever done was trusting his university counselor in his college. And I'm happy later on I had a chance to work with his university counselor, Sally Norris, who was also working in our school. So later on, so the roads were crossing from some other horizons. So in regards of university, so what was impressive for me that they had the grades, they had his information from his teachers, they knew his portfolio, they were aware of his CAS activities, any interests, and then also financial needs indeed, because you want if you qualify and want some sort of scholarship, they put together everything, and I am amazed how professionally they are able to put together and give a chance to every student to apply. I'm happy he tried to apply all 8 places, and by I think it was by the end of 3rd term when he heard about university acceptance. So by that time he already got his confirmation. Although as a parent, maybe I was thinking, no, it was a bit early. To tell him about it, he should have worked harder. This is relieving him. He will not do his best. And well, maybe as a parent, I was a bit also correct. But at the same time, they in the school know the stress level that the students are going with all IB exams and then with all confrontations they have in their head. So all I can say, I am happy I trusted. And I feel honored to be a part of a system, first as a parent, and then also as a staff member here in Uwcd region. I will pass the word to you, to other parents, and I will be happy to answer any questions that may come up later on.
Thank you very much, Tatavik. And now shall we go over to James?
I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Thank you for having me. By way of introduction, I think the blurb that went out for this session said I went to Harvard. I actually was a research fellow at Harvard. My undergraduate was spent at Syracuse University. But I have remained an interviewer for Harvard over about the last 10 years. So I can share some of what I've learned about the admissions process, particularly at the Ivies, because the interviewers from Harvard and Columbia and Dartmouth and other places, we often sort of intersect. So I grew up in Canada. I was among the first IB students in Canada. It was just starting to make its way over here. I had a particular passion for football and not a huge passion for school. So I pursued my dream to play football in the States, and that's how I ended up at Syracuse. And while the dream didn't work out particularly well, I have absolutely no regrets. And I think that's what I would like to tell parents is there are almost no wrong moves as long as you don't make a decision for reasons that are not authentic, that aren't true to the student. And I think that's so the really important questions to ask as you're looking, and I will implore you, do your own research. Harvey is wonderful, and guidance counselors and consultants are great, but they have their favorites. They have the processes they know well, and the admissions officers with whom they've dealt. They can give you great advice, but they don't really know, somebody in all, probably 150, 200 schools they deal with. So doing your own research up front is hugely valuable, so that when you get in to see Harvey or going forward with your other kids as well, if they're dealing with guidance counselors, it's very important they know a lot about the school, and then the guidance counselors will take that forward. The admissions officers will take that forward and begin making inquiries on your behalf. But figure out who you are. Are you a city, or you're in, if you're a parent, your kids, are they city kids? Are they country kids? Are they big school, big universities like, NYU or University of Illinois? Or are they small college, Dartmouth, Middlebury, Amherst, those types of schools? So I'm sorry, I talk in American terms, but there's examples of this around the world, obviously. And so I don't mean to become US focused, but that's where my daughter has chosen to go to Middlebury, and I think Thomas has been accepted to the University of Virginia, so he may go there, or he may come back to Canada or elsewhere. We haven't quite figured that out yet. He's got time. In doing your own research, don't get fixed on projects, or on programs, I should say. If I have one regret from my time in university, is that I spent the entire time trying to make myself employable. And I missed so much of the joy of university, because all I was worried about was being able to walk out the door and get a job. And so now I spend my time looking at the catalogs for Coursera and Masterclass on art history and literature and physics for poets and those types of classes, because I'd missed those. And so again, as you prepare for university, look for the things that interest you, and the life where you're going to spend your child is going to spend 4 years or more, and so look for things that interest you. I have tons of tips for the interviewing process. I won't bother with that right now. I know I'm coming up on my 5 minutes, but again, I'd be happy to answer all sorts of or any sorts of questions that I can be helpful with. I'll hand off at that point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And no need to apologise if anything sounds US-centric. I know significantly more about UK universities, so it's just fantastic to have such a range of panellists here. Shall we move on to Dr. Maraiwe? I think you need to unmute.
Good. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having me. And hello to all the parents. I'm wearing 2 hats at the moment. In that I am a UWC, well, maybe 3. I'm a UWCer. I went to AC a long time ago. And I also have a daughter at UWC Dilijan at the moment. And I'm also an interviewer for Harvard, like James, and I've been doing that for a long time. I also sit on the Rhodes Scholarship Committee and the BITE Scholarship Committee. So I've sat on quite a number of committees looking at students. And the thing that I'd like to say to parents, I sort of think of parents as sort of what I wish someone had told me in a way. The first is that if your child got into UWC Dilijan in the first place, they're probably going to be fine. So I think that we tend to put a lot of emphasis on where they're going to go to university and how they're going to do. And I think the main thing for parents is to reassure you that if your kid's gotten this far, this is the beginning of their journey, they're probably going to do very well. The bulk of my experiences with United States universities, so I'm going to sort of steer in that direction. I am living in Zimbabwe, so there's a sharp contrast between the two. United States universities, when they're interviewing, when they're looking at applications, they're not looking for a specialist. They're not looking for an architect or a doctor or something like that, which is the opposite in sometimes the UK and sometimes here in Zim, where they're looking for a kid with a specialty interest. In America, they really want you to be as broadly educated as possible. So they're looking for people who can take a smattering of different courses. And so I would just encourage parents when their young people are applying, not to get too hung up on certain, I think as James said, programs. There's a great app called Niche, N-I-C-H-E, which actually my eldest daughter introduced me to, which has all the American universities, and it tells you all about them in terms of diversity or specialty, or are they good in architecture, literature. So it gives you a nice smattering, how many international students, what their percentage taking is, what their average SAT scores. I found that really helpful as a form of research. So my third point is really that I think it's to reiterate what James said, which is find the school that suits your child. If they've started the journey at UWC, how was that journey? What will complete that journey as a human being, not so much as a, as a specialist or a brain surgeon, whatever, but just really what completes that journey. And you have to really drill down into the schools and to know your kid and know where they are now. The person that left you 2 years ago may not be the person that's there now and may have very different needs in terms of the university. And I think that we do often tend to get hung up on the Ivies. I went to 3 of them, Harvard, Columbia, and Yale. And I can honestly say that people should not get hung up on the Ivies. The Ivies do provide a great education, but I've had classmates from many, many different schools that were non-Ivies who left us all in the dust many, many times. And I don't think that if your kid does not get to an Ivy League school, it's the end of the world. So I'm really open and happy to entertain any sort of questions you may have. But I think that as a broad overall thing, I think that I would really like to say congratulations for most of the parents that you got this far with your kids. Having them go to UWC is an incredible experience. It is the foundation that I draw upon even now. And when I was at all of these other schools, I used that very much. And then to say that I do agree. You must do your own research, find out what your kid needs particularly, and then find out all the different sites and things, talk to a lot of people about it. Yeah, I think that would be my comments, and I'm really looking forward to having a discussion as we carry on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now over to Gönül and Orhan and Rosa.
Hi, my name is Orhan.
Hi, I am Gönül. We are very happy to be here. I'm very sorry we cannot speak fluently, so Rosa will help us to translate our speaking. I'm sorry. Üniversiteye girme süreci bayağı çok stresliydi. Bu bir sonuç değil, bir süreç. Belli bir zaman alıyor ve bu zaman içerisinde işte aktiviteler, dil barajı, ondan sonra SAT sınavı, bütün bunları hazırlık, bütün üniversitelerin üniversiteleri girip hangi üniversitesinin kendisine hitap ettiğini bulması çok çok önemli.
Sorry. So my mom says that it was a very challenging process for all of us, including me, them, and everyone in the school who helped us throughout this process. It wasn't an end goal, but rather a process itself. It included lots of different elements, from like completing activities to achieving certain grades to doing applications, then like deciding which college to go to based on your interests, what is going to be most beneficial for your kid and everything. So like they never saw it as an end goal, but rather a process overall.
Değil mi? Rosa'nın avantajı ne istediğini çok iyi biliyordu. Sosyal bilimleri istiyordu. Bütün Ivy League'ler dahil bütün üniversitelerin üniversiteyle ilgili projelerin ilgi alanını, sosyal bilimleri, hangisinin kendisine hitap ettiğini, aktivitelerini çok detaylı inceledi. Çok uzun süre hangi üniversiteye başvuracağını tartıştı, stratejik kararlar aldı ve ona göre başvurusunu yaptı.
She says that one of the biggest benefits they saw from my side was that I knew what I wanted, but it didn't occur to me directly what I wanted, but rather I did a lot of research when it comes to universities, like from like which professors teach at what colleges, like which classes offered, like what type of college it is where is it located, like how many people are in the student body. And like I spend lots of time, especially before the summer of the applications, doing that research and like crafting my list based on the research that I did. And like therefore like it also helped me during the application process to write essays that will that reflected the research that I have done and like how I would like to go to that school or how I fit in that school and etc.
Başvurularda mesela üniversitelerdeki yurt dışı uluslararası öğrenci sayısı, burs durumu, uluslararası hocaların tanınırlığı gibi pek çok faktör hem Avrupa hem Amerika'ya başvurduk. Ben kendim Avrupa istiyordum ama maalesef kızım Amerika'yı tercih etti. Mesafeden dolayı istiyordum. Amerika'nın daha özgür bir ortam olacağını düşündü.
I applied to not only US but European schools as well. They really wanted me to go to Europe, as like Europe is way closer to Turkey. So in case of an emergency or in general, they would have been able to access me or come visit me way easier. However, I wanted to go to the US, and moreover, we at the end came to the decision that it is the best for me to go to the US because of the scholarship barrier that exists in Europe. There is not a lot of scholarship opportunities for people who are not European, especially in the UK, or even there are certain opportunities in the Netherlands or some other European countries. It's still very limited. And for our family, it was a very important factor to be able to receive scholarship for us to afford me going to that school in the first place. Therefore, like US offering a lot of scholarship for international students. Moreover, on top, Davis scholarship existing for UWC graduates was very important for me to be able to access higher education in the US.
Başka bir şey
Yok.
söyleyecektim. Başka bir şey.
Bir şey daha ilerledik.
Başka.
Türkçe proje çevirisi.
Yani zamanlama çok önemli. SAT sınavının zamanlaması, hazırlığı. Biz biraz geç kalmıştık. Onun çok yoğun stresini yaşadık. Çok yoğun. Rozan'ın sosyal aktiviteleri çok fazlaydı. Bu arada zaman bulamamıştı. Son SAT sınavına yetiştirebildi. Bu konuda öğrencilerin hazırlıklı olmasını öneriyorum. Bol şans diliyorum hepsine.
Yeah, one recommendation they have overall, like based on the mistake that I did, was I wasn't like, we weren't able to schedule my like requirements very well. Therefore, like I ended up taking the last SAT that I could ever take, like without having any option to retake the SAT and like probably get a better score, because like I was constantly so busy or like prioritizing other things. We, especially like towards the end when the application season came, a lot of things got like crunched together, and like we were very much overwhelmed with the work that I needed to do, or like with the thing, like the deadlines that was approaching and like the time that I needed to spend for them. So they really recommend people to plan that ahead of time so that they can foresee their future. They wish the best of luck for everyone, and they hope that everyone will achieve they hope that everyone will achieve their dreams, and they thank everyone for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dilijan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure our students who are all very nervous about taking their exams at the moment will appreciate your good wishes. So I'm just going to speak very briefly about UK universities, and then if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll pose those to our panel. So just briefly, UK universities, they appear to be less popular with UWC students because there are fewer scholarships. However, it may depend very much on your geographical area, and if there is a particular university that you're really passionate about, that your son or daughter is really passionate about, then they should apply there. The big difference with the US is that you can only apply to 5 British universities, and contrary to popular belief, you can only apply to 1 of Oxford or Cambridge. The reason for this is because both of the universities are very competitive to get into, and they think that if they allowed applications to both, then there might be a possibility that they would be double offering students special opportunities. So the deadline for Oxbridge is usually the 15th of October, and the deadline for other British universities is later on in January. So if your son or daughter is interested in applying to Oxford or Cambridge, they should get their application in early, and it's actually good practice to make an early application in any case if your child's very certain about where they want to go, because a lot of universities offer places on a rolling basis. The UK has had a lot of disruption this year because of the pandemic, and students have been asked to go to accommodation, but they haven't necessarily been able to go to lectures in person. But the broad picture is that universities are hoping that won't be the case. Lockdown is due to end in the UK on the 21st of June this year. We don't know if that's going to happen, and universities are kind of trying to be optimistic about this at the moment, but largely the picture is hopeful that students will be able to go to in-person lectures next year. Okay, so I will have a little look at the questions we have for our panelists. Okay, so the first question is, how many DP2 students have already gained admission from different universities this year? This changes on a daily basis. I'm not sure of the exact figure, so I have written a message to Harvey and asked him to include this in his talk on the 5th of May. There are lots of happy faces. There are some disappointments as per usual, but yes, the figure changes all the time, and I wouldn't like to give you an inaccurate guess. Okay, So some questions for our panelists. Tatavik, how did...
I wanted to add there about the university admissions, whoever has heard at the moment. I just recently was in a big group of students in an event, and basically almost everyone in that group particularly had already some sort of offer. So it depends on whether they decide to take that offer or not. So, but basically almost, I guess, everyone has some, well, most of them at least have some sort of.
Thank you, that's fantastic news.
Yeah.
My question to you, Tatavik, was how did you cope with the US visa process? Were there any pitfalls, and was the university helpful with that?
Yes, indeed. University has sent the full package via FedEx and the acceptance letter, the scholarship and everything. And then we applied for visa, and then the process went smooth, and it just took a couple of like 2 weeks, I guess, to get this all papers sorted out. And he got his J1 visa. I think usually universities do send everything for the families to get ready, and it is in their high interest that the students are prepared to come at an early point rather than late.
That's very heartening to hear. So James and Dr. Nozipo, you read applications for Harvard. What are the areas of the application that you think need to be paid special attention to for Ivy League universities? And is there anything that you personally look for in applicants?
Do you want me to go first? Well, first off, we don't see the application, which is probably a good thing. So we don't know what your essays or your scores are. We just, one of the sort of little dirty secrets is that the interview process is as much about us trying to sell you on the university as you trying to sell us on you, student, I should say. And the reason being is if you're applying to Harvard, you're probably applying to Yale or Columbia or Dartmouth or other schools as well. And if you're a really good student, good enough to get into Harvard, you're probably good enough to go there. And so we're actually trying to sell you as much as you are us. So that's one reason to relax. But I would say the one thing I'm looking for is energy, intellectual curiosity and energy in the conversation. And just, a modicum of confidence that you belong there and that you're in this conversation because you have earned it and you feel you deserve it. Because it's very tough to go to one of these universities if you're not confident in yourself. So I think if I'm looking for something, it would be that.
Fantastic, thank you. Do you have anything to add, Dr. Nozipo? I think you need to unmute again.
I will stay on mute. Sorry about that, guys. So I couldn't agree more with what James has said, is that there are just some key things. One of the interview boxes is about the conversation that you have with the student. And they ask literally, are you pulling teeth? Is it question and answer? So this idea of looking for someone who's interested, engaging and engaged. Some of the best interviews are students who have a particular book or interest or a play or a historical figure or a physics philosophy that they are really into, and they start talking about it and their passion comes through and it engages the interviewer as much as the student. And most of the students that come through have impressive extracurriculars, they have impressive academics. It's not necessarily, this is sort of the starting point. The ground level is that you're a good student, you have great extracurriculars, you show some leadership potential, or you're a superstar in a single area. So I think the things that are, that will really be a death knell for students interviewing, I think this is for students and for parents who might be counseling students, do not make it rehearsed. It can't come across. Of course you rehearse and you prepare. It can be prepared, but it can't be rehearsed. It also can't be inauthentic. I interviewed a student whose mom had gone to Harvard, and there's a nice fine line between confidence and entitlement, and that's very important. But one of the things that came across is, as just sort of life experience, because whatever the student brings up, the interviewer is going to follow on. So whatever you're going to bring up in the interview, make sure that you can follow up on it. So the student brought up that they'd learned a lot about the world. I said, oh, well, how did you do that? And she said, well, our maid comes and tells me stuff. That doesn't come off that well. So it's important to be very genuine and have perspective. And I always tell the students when I'm interviewing them, I am your advocate. Like I will do whatever I can to try to make you look as attractive as possible to Harvard. So tell me about yourself. What doesn't the application tell you? So I think the applications are fairly straightforward. You obviously want to do as well as you can on your SAT. And I do agree with the idea of taking an SAT early and then trying to redo it and get a better score if you can. I don't think you need to spend gazillions dollars on tutors or things. If you get an SAT book and you read through that and some online tips, there's lots of free support for that. I think getting a good SAT is important because essentially what happened this year is a bunch of people, because the SAT was optional, a bunch of people thought, oh, great, let me just try, let me chance it. So you got a tremendous number of applicants. MIT's application went up 66%. Harvard's went up by less, but also a huge percent. So they only admitted 3.4% of their applicants, whereas they normally admit 4 or 5%. But that's because so many people decided to try. The SAT is a bit of information that adds to your application. So try to get as many bits of information that are good as possible. So not taking the SAT is only good if the rest of your record is amazing. But if it's not, then you absolutely want to burnish it with an SAT because that's just a further affirmation of you as a candidate. I think that's it, for me.
Thank you. I really like what you said about the admissions tutors trying to be your advocate as well, and I think that's the experience that people have when they go to interview at universities in the UK. The interviewer wants you to get it right, and they want you to do the best job you possibly can. Otherwise, it's a boring conversation for them as well. Sorry, James, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add, one of the other things that may not be known internationally is the early admissions process in the US is a tremendous advantage. So if there is a school that you want to apply to, that's the place you've always dreamed of, you want to go to Stanford or you want to go to University of Texas or whatever, or Harvard, get that application, be part of the early acceptance or early decision process, because the acceptance rates are almost double, sometimes triple what they are in the general in the general admissions process. So getting a head start on that is very useful.
Thank you. Another reason to get ahead as well is because if your child is in DP1, they're going to be facing a lot of deadlines as DP2 wears on, and the last thing that they want to have is lots of university applications to worry about. So the sooner they're done, the better. Now over to Gernal and Orhan. What are you looking for in applicants at Dikla University? And I do hope I'm pronouncing that right. Please feel free to correct me if I've been saying it wrong.
Okay. Yes.
Başvuruda Türkiye'de genel olarak şey var, merkezi sınav alıyor öğrenciler, üniversite sınavı var. uluslararası öğrencilerin ayrı girdiği bir sınav var. O sınavın sonuç olarak portfolyo hazırlamıyorlar. Özel bir başvuru yok. Sadece sınavla alınıyor maalesef. Yani ilk 100'e giren, ilk 500'e giren üniversiteler var Türkiye'de, fakat onlar da özel sınavlarla alınıyor.
So the application process is in Turkey in general is significantly different than any of the application processes that we have been talking about. That's why that was also one of the reasons why we struggled throughout the process. We have never experienced something like this before. We didn't know anyone who pursued higher education abroad before. That was also one of the challenges we faced. However, we were very much supported by the school and in general, like our admission, our university counseling, which we are very grateful of. However, in Turkey, so the university application process it can't be really called an application process, but because it's rather like you take a centralized multiple choice question exam, similar to SAT, but it encompasses like 5 years of your high school education, and it has like more subjects, like from physics to chemistry to Turkish to religion. And then you take this test, and after the test, they basically calculate how many rights and wrongs that you have done, how many rights and wrongs that you have done, and they create a list like from the basically like the best score to the last score. Depending on the score that you get, you are qualified to apply to certain universities. The only nuance that could have application could include separately from like this exam that we talk about is if you're applying to arts, or like if you're applying to physical education, they also look for some talent tests. When it comes to international students applying for universities in Turkey, except a few private universities in Istanbul, they are required to take the test. However, they do not take the same test as like Turkish students take. They take a separate international student test, and then still be included in this qualification, and then can apply to these schools. However, like more as the time progresses, like more schools are starting to accept IB diploma, which is a positive change, especially for Uwcd Diligent graduates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I have a question for you, Rosa, as well. What was the most difficult part? And let's make it positive as well. What was the greatest challenge and the most fantastic experience you've had in transitioning from life at Uwcd to life at Brown?
There's many challenges, particularly this year, I believe, because I think like starting to university is hard on its own, but starting to university during a global pandemic was even more challenging for me. And especially because we graduated from Uwcd Diligent pretty quickly without having the closure that we were all looking for. Even though I must note, like, I'm very grateful that we even had, I don't know, like a graduation, we even had like a chance to say goodbye to our friends and like all the staff members and students in general. So without that closure, it even made it harder for me to start university. I was constantly like reminiscing my days at Diligent and like how I miss my friends, the atmosphere. Especially Brown has a huge UWC, I mean, I wouldn't say huge, but a relatively big UWC population. And like all of my friends, like all my close friends are also UWC graduates all around the world. Therefore, like whenever we get together, we keep reminiscing about our times at UWC, and like still not over of that process, which is of course a challenge to be able to adapt to a new place. Another challenge I would say is to adapt to United States in general. I have never lived there. I've been there before, but for relatively very small amount of time. And like, and UWC, especially Diligent, is such a diverse school. From going to such a diverse place to relatively not diverse, I would say, at least a place that has a dominant culture and dominant like population was very challenging. But I think one of the greatest things about university is that like you have a great freedom to choose the classes that you would like, to explore new interests that you have never explored before. I mean, Dilijan has also offers that, but I think university to greater extent, like you get more freedom and like agency over your lesson choices and like what you want to pursue in life. Like there's not, at least in Brown especially, there's not a lot of requirements that I'm expected to follow. Therefore, like it helps me a lot with like learning more about myself and like trying to figure out how the future will look for me, which is very exciting. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rosa. And I think you must have transitioned to university in the most difficult year ever to transition to university. So hats off to you. The DP2 graduation last year was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. And everybody was absolutely in bits. So I have some news hot off the press from Harvey to answer one of our earlier questions. We're still gathering data from students that have gained university admission. However, we know that at least 86 out of 119 have a place at the current count. Essentially, all of the students who've submitted applications this year, bar one or two, have received a place. So that's fantastic news. A couple of students are still waiting on university decisions if they've applied in the UK and Europe, but it's good to know that by this time next year you should have a good picture of where your child will be off to university. And we have one more question in the chat as well. So I think maybe Tatavik may know the answer to this. It's, do the DP2 students who already gained admission to US universities, can they apply for visas in Armenia with recommendations letters from Uwcd?
I have just typed one small link. I hope they can see. Yeah, can they see? Yeah. Yeah, so I have just given you the link. Certainly, due to the pandemic, this year it will be a little bit different yet, but most of the students were applying for the visa, and we even had students who had to stay over during the summer and make sure they get their visa before they travel either back to their home countries or traveled directly from Armenia to the US. But we would certainly recommend, yes, do apply for visa from Armenia from now on if you have the package ready. It's just all about the package, whether you have it ready already. If you have all things together and you have your residence permit in Armenia, you have the right to apply to the visa in the US Embassy, because they are not running in the general circumstances. It's always better and recommended to apply earlier on. And then for some circumstances, for emergency cases, they also give extra appointments for students who need to go to study. But in your case, if you apply, or in any case, if you apply early, that would be certainly better.
Thank you so much, Tatavik. That's really good advice. I haven't touched on gap years at all. So Dr. Nozapro, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about that? We can't hear you.
Third time's a charm. Sorry, I just wanted to say that sometimes not everybody's ready to go to university. And also I know there are many European countries where students have to take a military service or have to do some sort of service for a year. And I just think that it's just important to address that. So it really is not anything detrimental to a student's application if they decide to take time off. My daughter decided to take a gap year, and I think it's a really good idea. This has been a really tough year in a lot of ways for everybody. And so I think you should feel free to talk to your guidance counselor or to research, what, as I said, if the student has started a journey, what are the complements to that journey in a gap year that would make that student feel more confident or have different experiences that might make them ready to go to university, or areas they want to explore, if they want to volunteer or do something in a particular area they're passionate about. So just wanted to say to parents and to students that it's okay also to take a gap year. And if you have commitments, do not feel like somehow that's going to deter your applicability, so to speak, because you can defer. For example, you can apply and then defer for a year, where in the US, I know that's common. If not, you can take time off and come back a better applicant, or if you want to retake your SATs, whatever it is that you want to do. If things didn't work out, we had family emergencies, we have students from refugee areas. If things didn't work out the way that you wanted to, please do understand that you can take a gap year and reapply. Another area is that people do transfer. So if you've gone to university for University of Texas for a couple of years and you decide that maybe University of California is where you want to be, you can transfer. That in the US, there is a really nice system for transfer. It's not lots of people, but it is an opportunity. And we had a lot of kids transfer into all the universities I went to who did very well and made friends and were able to settle in. So there are a number of other options if the first one doesn't go the way that you would have wanted to. Okay, thanks. I'm going to put myself back on mute.
Thank you. That was really fantastic advice, and much of that applies to the UK as well. There are some courses where they won't allow deferred applications. They're usually at Oxford or Cambridge, but that's something that the universities tend to make you aware of ahead of time, and otherwise they're very flexible, like the universities in the US. Okay, so I'm not aware that we have any more questions from our audience. Is there anything else that the panelists would like to add?
Perhaps about the gap year, Joe, and we have just had a few other students maybe who would go for a very interesting, exciting gap year adventures. I like GoMed, I like all these opportunities for the students that they semester at sea or whatever they are taking. They are amazing programs and certainly deserves life experience, and if I were them, I would certainly go for that. So I like that and appreciate very much that our students are offered support not only for university but also for the gap year options, where they can explore the world and challenge and adventures, go through these adventures as much as they can with all their current young ages. I would certainly do so too. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
I'll jump in. The two things I wanted to leave you with is one, enjoy the journey of the application process, and particularly the research. Spread your vision widely, and look for things that you mightn't have thought you wanted. So because there are a lot of wonderful schools and a lot of wonderful places to be in this world, and even if you don't end up going there, you might do a semester abroad, or something that, so it will capture your imagination. The other thing, this is a little bit more in the realm of sort of the realist. There is a tremendous randomness to the admissions process, and it matters. It matters what day you arrive on an admissions officer's desk, who else is in the stack with you, because they go through file by file and say yes, maybe no. And if you catch them on a bad day, I mean, lots of things can happen, and so you can't take it personally. That's the one other thing. No one is guaranteed a spot in, and sometimes magical things happen, and you just capture the admissions officer's imagination at just the right time. Both things happen, and so again, enjoy the process, dream big, but also, be prepared. There are disappointments, but there are also wonderful things that can come from it. So.
Thank you.
I think when I was applying, I remember it's a long time ago, but I do pass on this advice, which is that it was always apply for depending on what you can afford, because there are application fees, but we were told to apply to 5 that you might get into, but probably couldn't. It was a reach. 5 that you knew you were safely within their horizon. You had the right grades, you were in the right paradigm for that. And then 5 that you kind of knew you could get into, like they would be happy to have you. And that at least, safety schools, so-called safety schools, although I must say in this day and age, there are very few, the competition is fierce. And I certainly don't think I could have gotten into any of the schools that I got into now. The competition is incredible. So I think that spreading it wide. So don't just, I think sometimes students lean on all the schools, the reach schools, or they go to the safety schools and don't, as you say, what James said is random. Yeah, go for a couple of reach schools. You've got nothing to lose. They're going to come back and say no, and you'll be in the same place you were before. So there is a randomness to it. So you may have a shot. So I would definitely spread yourself within the criteria across the spectrum. Thank you.
Yani ben sadece size her şey için teşekkür ederim. UWC Division'a teşekkür ediyorum. Çocuklarımız her şey sonunda mutlaka yoluna girecektir. Mutlaka girecektir. Ama çocuklarımız her zaman mutlu olacakları şeyleri seçsinler.
Yeah. They say thank you very much for this session, but also for everything that UWC Division has done for me and for every other student there. They also say that at the end, even though it is very frustrating during the process and it's very challenging, at the end, everything will be all right. And the most important thing is that you are healthy, that you are happy. And these things, even though it matters and we are told that it matters all of our lives, there are so much more things that matters more, and we should always value them and cherish them. And yeah.
I don't think I could end on any better advice than that. The most important thing is to be happy. Okay, so I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our panelists again for giving up their time today and giving us their wisdom. And thank you all as well for joining. And hopefully we've been able to help you in some way with university admissions. It's a frustrating process, but there is an end in sight at least. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free to get in touch with us. Harvey is probably the best person to answer your questions. And he will be, as I said at the beginning, he will be hosting another talk about university admissions and the application process on the 5th of May. So please join us for that. Okay, so with that, I'd like to say goodbye to everybody. And it's wonderful to meet everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.